since many have undertaken to set down an orderly account of the events that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed on to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word, I too decided, after investigating everything carefully from the very first, to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the truth concerning the things about which you have been instructed. The account of Luke is not like many other accounts. It is very, very different. And what's different, what's extremely different about it, is that it is written not as a letter. It is written to someone by the name of Theophilus as a matter of instruction, as a matter almost of historical account. In other words, what Luke has done is Luke has culled from a great body of information a lot of material to tell a complete story. Not just where Mark begins. Mark begins abruptly, suddenly. 30 years old, we have this guy who went out and he got baptized by John, and now he's a minister. What Luke has done is Luke has tried to talk about the beginnings, the origins, then about the ministry and about the crucifixion and sacrifice of the Christ and about the church in his sequel document in Book 2, Luke's Book 2, which is called the Acts of the Apostles. Luke, the Acts of the Apostles. In Book 1, what he does is he tells us about the origins of this movement. Now, this particular account is written probably somewhere around 80 or 90 of the Common Era. How many years is that after the crucifixion? 50, 60 years, okay? How many people live in 50 to 60 years? How many generations of people? 3 generations of people? How much older are you than your grandchildren? Think about it. How many generations of people live in that 60-year period? So we have at least 3 generations of people who have been part of the movement. We have at least 3 generations of people who have taught about what it means to be a follower of Jesus Christ. And Luke is writing a full account, a whole account, a grand account for a person who it is believed by some scholars is a Roman official. Why would he write for a Roman official? A Roman official curious about these Christians? It was in 80 and 90 of the Common Era that Christianity started to come into its own and really started to have an impact on entire societies and, in fact, later on the world. I want to talk to you about Luke's account of angels. Luke tells us about visitations from one angel by the name of Gabriel. Now, I don't know how many of you know a lot about angels. I don't know if you've met any. But angels have been around for a long, long time. Angels have been around since Genesis. Angels came to speak with Abraham and Sarah. Isn't that interesting? Angels came as messengers to Abraham and Sarah, 2 old folks who didn't have a child, and 2 angels came to them to tell to tell them that they were going to, in fact, have a son. Well, oddly enough, in this Gospel of Luke, there's this story about 2 old people by the name of Elizabeth and Zechariah. The angel comes to them and tells them that they are going to have a son. Isn't that odd? Anyway, parallel stories. Very, very important. The image images are very recognizable to the people who are hearing this. The people who are hearing these stories, when this account is read to them, are people who are very familiar with Old Testament scripture. They are people who were born either Jewish or they were Gentiles who were converted to Judaism. But the Old Testament scriptures aren't foreign to them. It's a familiar story. So when they start hearing Luke's account, they go, well, that sounds very familiar. The story about Elizabeth and Zechariah that starts out his gospel sounds an awful lot like that story of Abraham and Sarah. Must be the same God doing at work again. What you need to know, I got off on a tangent. What you need to know is about this angel thing. Angels came to speak to God's people, and they were messengers from God. Now, there were angels who were scary angels, and angels that were benevolent angels. Now, the benevolent angels, the ones who came with the good news, would always say to the folks, one of the first things they'd say was, do not be afraid. Very good. Fill in the blanks really well. Do not be afraid. And so these angels who would say, do not be afraid, were bringing some kind of good news from God. And the angels who came to Abraham and Sarah said, do not be afraid. The angels who came to Lot came to, they were God's, what I'm going to call them, God's private investigators. When Lot was living in Sodom and Gomorrah and was visited by two angels, they were God's PIs. They were checking out the situation in Sodom and Gomorrah because they heard that even though Abraham had bargained for the lives of all of humankind in Sodom and Gomorrah and said, you know, God, if we can find one righteous man in Sodom and Gomorrah, will you spare the whole city? So what does God do? God sends angels to check it out. Let's see if a good and righteous person can be found in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. So angels are not only benevolent creatures, they are also scary creatures. The angel Satan is the one who stands at the side of God and looks at Job as God says, how about my servant Job? Is he not something else again? And it's the angel Satan who plants the seed and says, yeah, but you haven't tested him yet. See what happens when you test him. So angels can be scary beings. When Daniel was confronted by the angel came to Daniel and said, Daniel, we know you're in trouble, but don't be afraid because that we have a plan for you and we are going to save you. Daniel, you are important. When God's messengers have come, they have come with good news and they have come with bad news. They have come with scary news and they have come with good news. When the angel Gabriel came to Zechariah in Luke's account, he said, once Zechariah was serving as a priest before God. Now, as a priest before God, he knows about angels. If he is a Pharisee, particularly, he knows about angels. If he is a Sadducee, which is a priest, he knows about angels. He's on duty. He was chosen by lot, and according to the custom of the priesthood, he was to enter the sanctuary of the Lord. Now, at the time of the incense offering, the whole assembly of the people were praying outside. Then there appeared to Zechariah an angel of the Lord standing at the right side of the altar of incense. Now, I want you to picture, it's not Cupid, okay? This angel is not Cupid. It's not a little cherub with cute little wings. The angel of the Lord is a large being with gigantic wings. Think huge. An intimidating character. When Zechariah saw the angel, Zechariah